Hello everyone, it's MotherGeek here. Welcome to my YouTube Christmas book advent. It's time to open another book. I wonder which one we're reading today. Let's see. The First Christmas Tree and Other Christmas Stories, published by Miles Kelly. This book contains 4 stories. Jesus is born in Bethlehem, The First Christmas Tree, The Elves and the Shoemaker, and Christmas Every Day. Today I'm just going to be reading the cover story, which is The First Christmas Tree. The First Christmas Tree, an extract from The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by Frank Baum. This is part of a story telling how Santa Claus lives in a place called Laughing Valley, but goes out into the world to bring joy to children. Claus had always kept his promise, returning to the Laughing Valley by daybreak, but only the swiftness of his reindeer has enabled him to do this, for he travels all over the world. He loved his work, and he loved the brisk night ride on his sledge, and the gay tinkle of the sleigh bells. On that first trip with the 10 reindeer, only Glossie and Flossie wore bells, but each year after for 8 years, Claus carried presents to the children of the Gnome King, and that good-natured monarch gave him in return a string of bells at each visit, so that finally every one of his 10 deer was supplied. You may imagine what a merry tune the bells played as the sledge sped over the snow. The children's stockings were so long that it required a great many toys to fill them, and soon Claus found there were other things besides toys that children love. So he sent some of the fairies, who were always his good friends, into the tropics. They returned with great bags full of oranges and bananas that they had plucked from the trees, and other fairies flew to the wonderful valley of Funnyland, where delicious candies and bonbons grew thickly on the bushes, and returned laden with many boxes of sweetmeats for the little ones. On each Christmas Eve, Santa Claus placed these things in the long stockings, together with his toys, and the children were glad to get them, you may be sure. There were also countries where there is no snow in winter, but Claus visited them as well as the colder countries, for there were little wheels inside the runners of his sledge that permitted him to run as smoothly over bare ground as on the snow. And the children who lived in the warm countries learned to know the name of Santa Claus as well as those who lived nearer to the Laughing Valley. Once, just as the reindeer were ready to start on their yearly trip, a fairy came to Claus and told him of 3 little children who lived beneath a rough tent of skins on a broad plain, where there were no trees. These poor children were miserable and unhappy, for their parents neglected them. Claus decided to visit these children before he returned home, and during his ride he picked up the bushy top of a pine tree, which the wind had broken off, and placed it in his sledge. It was nearly morning when the reindeer stopped before the lonely tent of skins where the poor children lay asleep. Claus planted the bit of pine tree in the sand and stuck many candles on the branches. Then he hung some of his prettiest toys on the tree, as well as several bags of candies. It did not take long at all to do this, for Santa Claus works quickly, and when all was ready he lit the candles and, thrusting his head in at the opening of the tent, he shouted, "Merry Christmas, little ones!" With that he leapt into his sledge, and was out of sight before the children, rubbing the sleep from their eyes, could come out to see who had called them. You can imagine the wonder and joy of those little ones, who had never in their lives known a real pleasure before, when they saw the tree, sparkling with lights that shone brilliant in the grey dawn, and hung with toys enough to make them happy for years to come. They joined hands and danced around the tree, shouting and laughing until they were obliged to pause for breath. And their parents also came out to look and wonder, and thereafter had more respect and consideration for their children, since Santa Claus had honoured them with such beautiful gifts. The idea of the Christmas tree pleased Claus, and so the following year he carried many of them on his sledge, and set them up in the homes of poor people who seldom saw trees, and placed candles and toys on the branches. Of course he could not carry enough trees in one load for all who wanted them, but in some homes the fathers were able to get trees, and have them all ready for Santa Claus when he arrived. And these Claus always decorated as prettily as possible, and hung with toys enough for all the children who came to see the tree lit. These ideas, and the generous manner in which they were carried out, made the children long for that one night of the year when their friend Santa Claus should visit them. As such anticipation is very pleasant and comforting, the little ones gleaned much happiness by wondering what would happen when Santa Claus next arrived. The end. Thanks for watching. Check back tomorrow for another story.